Welcome everyone, it's Michelle McLean here with another health coaching skills tutorial. Hey Jana, nice to see a few folks tuning in today. So we're going to talk today all about note-taking during your client sessions. So I actually got a lot of responses back last week from a little poll that I did about Facebook Live topics, and folks were really interested in learning more about note-taking. So chances are you've got some questions about how to do it, what that might look like, what to do with those notes, and hopefully I'll answer all of those questions for you today. So I want to share first just a little bit of my experience with note-taking, because I want to admit sort of first off during the session that I'm probably not the best person to advise you on taking notes. It's kind of more of that do as I say, not as I do kind of scenario here, because I will admit that I take way too many notes. This has definitely been an issue for me. It's something that I talked to my mentor about, to try to work on this. I just want to give you a little sample of a page of notes that I took during a client session. You can see I have highlighters, I have notes in the margin, I have different color pen for all of these different pieces that I want to remember. And so, I'm working on this, right? It's a work in progress for me. I take way too many notes. But what I want to say is that I really learn by writing. So I'm a great listener, but my listening skills are reinforced and enhanced when I actually take the notes. So I really find it's useful in my coaching practice to be able to write down, key things that my clients are saying so that I can reflect them back, that I can paraphrase, that I can summarize. I just glance down at my notes, and then I can reflect and repeat back, summarize, and paraphrase back to my client what I heard. And it's a really important part of the coaching process. So for me, I might sort of hang on to those notes and put more into them than I really need to. I could probably lighten up a little bit, but for me, it's what I've done for the last 10 years. It's worked for me for the last 10 years. I've just realized that, maybe I'm just taking too many notes. Maybe I'm just doing too much work, and that I don't need to be doing all of that. So I definitely think it's helping me to be a good coach. And so part of my coaching process really is what I want to say. So I've had lots of students say to me things like, wow, you're such a great listener. How did you remember all that? How did you remember all those details? And bottom line is I wrote it down, right? So it really just helps my coaching process. I love pen and paper. I love taking notes. I love the act of just handwriting things. So it's just been part of, my coaching process. So I did a little research when I was thinking about this topic to share with you today. And actually it is known, it's been researched that handwriting, versus typing on a keyboard really does make you learn and remember better. It has a much deeper impact on the brain when you listen and then when you write. So apparently it's like the combination of motor skills, touch sensation, and that visual perception that actually reinforces the learning process. So there's absolutely something to it. There's research in it. And I guess that's why I've just found it to be such a helpful process in my coaching. So like I said, it's definitely worked for me over the last 10 years during my coaching process. Other than, spending lots of money on stacks of loose leaf paper and pens and highlighters and things like that, I don't think there's really a downside to it for me for taking all of these notes. Other than, as I said before, it's probably just too much. I probably don't need to, work so hard at getting every word that my client is saying down. And like I said, maybe I'm holding on to those notes, maybe as a little bit of a security blanket, not trusting myself maybe enough to just remember through listening. And that's probably a story or therapy or something for another day, to me to figure, why am I kind of clinging on to those notes so strongly? But anyway, yeah, leave that for another day. So what I want to say is this is going to be different for all of us, right? Some of you are going to be like me. You're going to love pen and paper. You love taking notes. You love colored pens and highlighters. You love all of that. Other people really love to type. You know, you're great typists. Typing is actually more efficient, right? You can get more down in a shorter period of time from typing. So, you know, handwriting things definitely takes longer. Other people I know are just generally, you know, inherently great listeners. So they can be just in the moment, they can be listening, and they're recalling everything. They're taking it all in. So it's really, I think, important for you to experiment what's going to work for you. Try a bunch of different ways. Try not taking notes, you know, try taking lots of notes, try just listening, right? I think you need to really rely on your own natural preferences and tendencies around this to find what's going to work for you, because there's definitely no right or wrong to this. So in thinking about this topic, I came up with 5 tips for you, or sort of 5 pointers, things for you to consider around note-taking in your health coaching sessions. So the first thing that I want to say is I think you should talk about note-taking during your first session with your client. So what I like to call a foundation session. I have a checklist, a first session checklist of all of the things that I want to cover with my client in that first session. And one of the things that I mention in that checklist is note taking. So I explain to the client that I'm going to be taking notes, and those are for my purposes, my learning, my understanding, my comprehension, you know, my recall and remembering. And I also suggest that the client take their own notes as well. So mine are for my purposes. As I said, they're not meant for being shared for anyone else to read them. No one else could probably even read them or make sense of them. So I really encourage my client, if you want to remember anything, if there's key things that happen during the coaching session, I think it's really, really important for you to take your own notes. So the other just caveat to that I want to say is that, you know, we're doing a lot of virtual sessions these days, which we can record. So, you know, talk about that with your client. If you're recording the session, you're going to send it to them as a follow-up. Maybe they don't need to take as many notes, right? They can just go back and refer back to the replay of your call. So that's the first one. Definitely talk to your client during that first session about note-taking, your note-taking and their note-taking. Then my second point, my tip is definitely take some notes. So whatever that looks like for you, I definitely think that note-taking can be really, really helpful. Again, whatever that looks like for you. So I personally think, as I said before, it helps with my coaching process. It helps me recall things. It helps me remember specific details about my clients. It helps with my reflecting, paraphrasing, summarizing what we've talked about. So I really think it's important, again, as I said before, you know, just find what works best for you. And, you know, don't do like I do. Don't try to take down every word. It's not a transcription, right, of your call. But try to just capture those key words, key phrases, specific details that are important to your client that you think are important for you to recall. In terms of, you know, what those notes look like for you, again, you might love to take notes like I do on paper. Maybe you're more of a visual person, you know, maybe you like bubbles and lines and diagrams and arrows. So maybe more of like a graphical kind of diagram versus just handwritten notes. That's actually when I had the conversation with my mentor about what I should do about my note-taking. You know, she suggested more of kind of a diagram type thing, like mind mapping. And what she does is she just puts a circle in the middle of the page, she puts the client's name, and then she has all kinds of different sort of just thought bubbles and things that she puts around the outside of that. I tried that. It didn't quite work as well for me. I just really like my long-winded notes, if you will. So again, finding what works for you, but do try to take some notes, especially if you find that you're missing, you know, things that your clients say, or if you're not able to reflect or remember what they're saying, you know, jotting down some of those things I think is really, really important. One of the things that I just wanted to mention here was that in my Brilliant Health Coaching bundle, I include a master coaching template that includes sort of all the steps that you would go through during a coaching session. And then on the right-hand side of the page, I've left a place for notes. So what you can do with that is just download that for each client It kind of guides you through the steps of things that you need to talk about, and you can jot down your notes right on that page. So if that's something that might be helpful for you, I will definitely put a link to that in the comments below. So my third point that I wanted to mention, is this question of, are you doing handwritten notes or are you typing the notes? Obviously, my preference right away is to handwrite my notes. I just love to be able to have my highlighters, my colored pens, scribble all over the page, and it just works for me. And I personally find it, whenever I've been in a situation where someone was actually typing on a video conference call, I found that really distracting. The tick, tick, tick of the keyboard kind of drives me a little crazy. So I find that really distracting. But if you set that up as an agreement of what's going to take place during your coaching sessions with your client, and everybody's good with that, then we're all good with it, right? So there's lots of different platforms and customer relationship management software tools that you can use. I'm not that high tech. I am still old school with my pen and paper. But if you're typing into like a CRM or something like Practice Better or Healthy, it's more efficient, right, to get those notes directly into that system. You can do whatever, they are saved there, and do what you want. They're there, right? You don't have to just transcribe anything after. But again, I'm just really old school. I keep everything in paper folders and files for my clients. So that's kind of what works for me. So my fourth just tip or question, is, do you actually send your notes to the client afterward? That's a big question that I get. What do you do with the notes, right? So I'm taking all of these different notes. What am I doing with them? For me, I'm just filing them in the folder as I shared. For any of you who have been following me for a while, you know that I'm not a big fan of sending giant recap emails to my clients. I did that for a couple of years. It was just too much. So I personally prefer to have my clients send me a quick recap of their action steps, but nowhere am I sending a transcription of the notes and things like that. Again, nowadays with virtual conference calling, we can record the session, so they can definitely have that transcription there. So, as I said, I'm not sharing those notes with anyone. People wouldn't probably be able to make heads or tails of them anyway. They're really for my purposes. So I do not send those notes to my client after. I keep them in their file. I keep all those notes and files locked up, according to HIPAA guidelines, the privacy regulations. So they're just for my purposes. So my fifth and final tip for you today is, how to stay engaged with note-taking. Because we have so many different platforms and different ways to host our coaching sessions these days, it's kind of going to look different, in all the different scenarios. So if you're in person with your client, your client's going to be able to see everything that you're doing, right? So maybe you're not taking as many notes and you're, looking at your client, you're interacting, you're engaging with your client, you're looking at their body language, you're taking all of that information in, along with taking some notes. So they're going to see that. So, you just want to be really clear with your client. I am going to be taking some notes. I am going to be looking down, but I'm present. I'm listening and hearing everything that you're saying. And you're just going to find your own flow and rhythm with that. Then, of course, we have the opposite end, which is phone coaching, right? So you're having audio only. There's, the client can't see you. You can't see them. So you have, a lot of privacy then, right? You could be looking down the entire time taking all of your notes because your client's not going to see that. I personally find that I can really focus a lot more when no one's looking at me, right? When my clients aren't looking at what I'm doing, I'm not feeling like they're wondering, what am I writing down and why did she take notes there and all of that kind of thing. So, phone, you have that privacy to do whatever you want. So nowadays, again, though, I think most of us are probably doing video conferencing, video calls. And so it's kind of in the middle there, right? They can't see everything that you're doing, your client. But again, it's really, really important for you to say, I am going to be looking down. I am going to be taking some notes, but I just want you to know that I'm engaged, I'm listening, I'm fully present, to our coaching call. And definitely you want to make sure that you're, looking up, you are making eye contact, and you're interacting with the client and really staying engaged, in the client session. So you can still have all of your notes there. You can be, scribbling and taking all of those notes the client can't see, sort of below head and shoulders, right, to see what you're doing. But they know as you're looking down that you are going to be taking some notes. So I think that's okay. It's expected these days, right? I think, again, you're setting it up. You're having a conversation about what note-taking is going to look like. They're going to be taking their own notes. They're going to be looking down from time to time as well. And it's all about expectations and how you set it up. So those are my 5 tips. Definitely talk about note-taking during your first session. Definitely take some sort of notes, whatever works best for you. And, figure out, again, preference. Is it for you handwriting those notes or typing them out? Which works best for you? My preference, not to send client notes after, but get your client to do that recap. Puts the responsibility on the client, right? They're responsible for their actions, for their notes, for their takeaways from the session. So again, setting that up from the beginning, and then just really staying engaged even while you are still taking notes throughout the session, I think can absolutely happen. So I hope those tips were helpful for you today. If you have any questions about note-taking at all, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have. I will as well put a link below to my Brilliant Health Coaching Bundle if you're interested in that master coaching template and a place where you can take notes right on that handout. So thanks for tuning in today, everyone, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye for now.